Good evening, my friend. Tonight, leave behind the worries of the day. Let your shoulders soften. Take a slow, comfortable breath in and gently breathe out. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to solve. For the next little while, you are simply here, wrapped in the quiet comfort of this peaceful story. As your breathing becomes slower and steadier, imagine yourself traveling back to a gentler America. Not the America of busy cities or crowded highways, but a peaceful, fictional land hidden among rolling green hills, wide rivers, ancient forests, and quiet valleys. Long before towering skylines touched the clouds, there was a forgotten kingdom known as Evergreen Valley. It rested somewhere beyond the Blue Ridge Mountains, where soft morning mist floated above crystal-clear streams and golden sunlight filtered through towering oak and maple trees. Although this kingdom never appeared on modern maps, the people who lived there believed it was the happiest place in the world. Not because it was rich, not because it was powerful, but because it was ruled by the most honest king anyone had ever known. His name was King Theodore Ashford. Unlike many rulers in old legends, King Theodore wore no glittering crown inside his palace. He preferred a simple leather hat while walking through the village streets. His royal cloak was plain blue wool, stitched by local weavers rather than decorated with gold. Every morning, long before the church bell echoed across the valley, the king would quietly leave his stone castle. Instead of traveling with soldiers, he walked alone. The fresh morning air carried the scent of pine trees and wildflowers. Birds welcomed the sunrise with gentle songs. The nearby river whispered softly over smooth stones that had rested there for centuries. King Theodore believed every day should begin by listening to nature before listening to people. He often paused beside a wooden bridge that crossed the Silver Creek. There he watched trout glide beneath the clear water while deer stepped carefully through the forest nearby. Sometimes he simply smiled. Sometimes he closed his eyes and listened, because in his heart honesty began with silence. The people loved him for this. Children waved as he passed. Farmers greeted him with warm smiles. Blacksmiths invited him to share morning coffee beside glowing forges. The king accepted every invitation with kindness. One crisp autumn morning, while golden leaves drifted gently across the road, something unusual happened. A young boy no older than 12 came running toward the king. His boots were dusty. His breathing was heavy. In his hands rested a small wooden box. "Your Majesty," the boy said between deep breaths, "I found this beside the old mill." The king carefully accepted the box. It was beautifully carved from walnut wood. Inside were dozens of bright gold coins. Enough money to buy several farms. Enough to change someone's entire life. The boy looked at the coins only once before lowering his eyes. "I knew they weren't mine," he quietly said. King Theodore smiled with gentle warmth. "You have already shown the greatest treasure," he replied. "The gold." The king softly shook his head. "No. Your honesty." Together they carried the box back to the village square. Instead of keeping the treasure inside the royal castle, the king placed it on a simple wooden table beneath the great white oak tree in the center of town. A handwritten sign rested beside it. "If this belongs to you, tell us what is inside before opening the box. Truth will always find its owner." Days passed peacefully. People continued planting wheat. Children skipped stones across Silver Creek. Families gathered each evening on wooden porches, watching the sunset paint the sky with soft shades of orange and lavender. No one touched the box. No one tried to steal it, because the people had learned something far more valuable than wealth. They had learned to trust one another. On the fourth morning, an elderly woman slowly approached the square. She carried a woven basket filled with fresh apples. Her silver hair shone gently beneath the autumn sun. With quiet confidence, she explained that the box belonged to her late husband's family. Inside, she said, were exactly 63 gold coins, along with a tiny silver compass wrapped inside a blue cloth. King Theodore opened the box. Every word she spoke was true. The villagers smiled. The little boy smiled. The elderly woman thanked everyone, but especially the young boy who had chosen honesty over temptation. As a reward, she offered him several gold coins. The boy politely refused. "My father says kindness loses its meaning if we expect payment." The king's eyes filled with quiet pride. At that moment he realized something beautiful. An honest kingdom is never built by one honest king. It is built by thousands of honest hearts. That evening the castle stood peacefully beneath a sky filled with countless stars. Warm lanterns glowed from every cottage window. A cool breeze drifted through the pine forests surrounding Evergreen Valley. Inside the castle library, King Theodore opened an old leather journal. Every night he wrote one sentence before going to bed. Not about battles, not about riches, not about power, only one quiet lesson. Tonight he carefully dipped his feather quill into ink and wrote, "The greatest crown a ruler can wear is the trust of the people." He gently closed the journal. Outside, the moon slowly climbed higher into the peaceful American sky. The river continued its endless song. Crickets softly filled the cool evening air. The forest settled into silence. And somewhere in the quiet valley, every family drifted peacefully towards sleep, knowing that tomorrow would begin once again with truth, kindness, and hope. Now, as you listen to the gentle breeze moving through the tall trees of Evergreen Valley, allow your own thoughts to become lighter. Imagine yourself standing beside the calm Silver Creek. Feel the cool evening air. Hear the peaceful sounds of flowing water. Above you, thousands of bright stars sparkle across the endless American night sky. There is nothing to hurry, nothing to fear, only peace, only quiet, only the gentle promise that honesty, like the stars above, continues to shine even in the darkest night. And as your breathing grows slower, your eyelids become heavier, you can simply rest, knowing our peaceful journey through Evergreen Valley will continue tomorrow night. The morning arrived quietly over Evergreen Valley. A thin blanket of silver mist rested across the fields, while the first rays of sunlight slowly painted the tops of the tall pine trees with warm shades of gold. The gentle sound of the Silver Creek flowed through the valley, just as it had every morning for generations. King Theodore Ashford awoke before the first church bell. As always, he opened the window of his simple chamber and welcomed the cool mountain air. The scent of cedar, fresh grass, and wildflowers drifted gently inside. Somewhere in the distance, a robin sang its cheerful morning song. The king smiled. He believed every sunrise was a quiet reminder that each new day offered another chance to choose honesty. After a simple breakfast of warm bread, fresh butter, apples, and honey gathered from local beekeepers, King Theodore began his usual walk through the kingdom. The village was slowly waking. A baker pulled fresh loaves from a glowing stone oven. Children carried wooden buckets to the village well. Carpenters swept sawdust from their workshops. Neighbors greeted one another with warm smiles instead of hurried footsteps. Life in Evergreen Valley moved gently, like the calm river itself. As the king reached the old wooden bridge across Silver Creek, he noticed someone he had never seen before. An elderly traveler sat quietly on a weathered tree stump. His long gray coat was dusty from many miles of walking. A worn leather backpack rested beside him. His boots carried the marks of distant roads. The stranger looked toward the flowing water with peaceful eyes. When the king approached, the traveler stood and bowed politely. "Good morning," he said with a kind smile. "And a peaceful morning to you," King Theodore replied. "I have traveled across many lands," the old man said softly. The king tilted his head slightly. "They say there is a king in America who cannot be tempted by gold." King Theodore laughed gently. "I am simply a man trying to make good choices." The traveler smiled. "Sometimes good choices are the hardest ones." The two men walked together along the riverbank. They spoke about forests, rivers, changing seasons, and quiet evenings beneath the stars. The traveler never asked about power. He never asked about the castle. Instead, he asked only one question. What is the greatest treasure a king can possess? King Theodore did not answer immediately. He watched a family of ducks glide peacefully across the water. Finally he spoke. The trust of his people. The traveler nodded slowly. Many rulers answered differently. Before they reached the village, the old man thanked the king for the pleasant conversation and continued walking toward the western hills. The villagers barely noticed him. He disappeared into the forest as quietly as he had arrived. Several days passed peacefully. Then, one cool afternoon, an unusual visitor entered the marketplace. This time it was not an elderly traveler. It was a wealthy merchant from a distant city. His wagon sparkled with polished brass. His horses wore bright leather harnesses decorated with silver buckles. Inside the wagon rested beautiful treasures: golden clocks, silk blankets, crystal lamps, jewelry that shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. People gathered around to admire the fine collection. The merchant bowed before King Theodore. "Your Majesty," he announced proudly, "I have traveled thousands of miles to bring you a gift worthy of a great king." Two assistants carefully lifted a magnificent golden crown from the wagon. Tiny diamonds sparkled like morning dew. Blue sapphires reflected the clear American sky. The crowd gasped in amazement. The merchant smiled confidently. "No king in the world owns a crown like this." King Theodore looked quietly at the beautiful crown. Truly was extraordinary. Every jewel had been perfectly placed. Every golden leaf had been carefully carved. But after several peaceful moments, the king gently shook his head. "It is beautiful," he said kindly, "but I cannot accept it." The merchant looked surprised. "Surely every king deserves such a treasure." King Theodore smiled. "If I wear something far more valuable than my people can afford, they may begin believing I rule above them instead of beside them." The marketplace became silent. The merchant frowned. "You refuse gold?" "I refuse anything that might weaken trust." The merchant stared at the king for several quiet moments. Then, unexpectedly, he began to laugh. Not a cruel laugh, a warm one. He removed his fine traveling hat. "You have answered exactly as I hoped." The villagers looked at one another in confusion. The merchant quietly reached into his pocket and removed a small wooden carving. It was the shape of a tiny oak tree. "The elderly traveler who met you by the river." The king smiled. "I remember him. He was my father. He has spent 40 years searching for truly honest leaders." The merchant placed the little oak carving into the king's hand. "He told me only one ruler answered with humility instead of pride." King Theodore looked down at the simple wooden gift. Compared with the golden crown, it seemed almost ordinary, yet somehow felt priceless. The merchant quietly loaded the magnificent crown back onto his wagon. "I shall sell this crown elsewhere," he said. "But this little carving belongs only to the king who values truth above treasure." That evening, after sunset painted the valley with soft pink and lavender colors, King Theodore returned to the castle. Instead of placing the wooden oak inside the royal treasury, he set it on the windowsill beside his bed. Whenever moonlight entered the room, it softly illuminated the tiny carving. It reminded him that the smallest gifts often carried the greatest meaning. Outside, the forests whispered gently beneath the evening breeze. Owls called softly among the ancient trees. Silver Creek continued its peaceful journey beneath the stars. The castle grew quiet. Families across Evergreen Valley finished warm suppers together. Lanterns glowed inside cozy wooden homes. Children listened to bedtime stories while fireplaces crackled gently. As darkness wrapped itself around the peaceful American valley, every heart seemed lighter than before, because honesty had once again chosen simplicity over riches. Now imagine yourself walking slowly beside the same quiet river. The moon shines gently across the calm water. Tall pine trees sway softly in the cool night breeze. The stars above seem endless, each one glowing with quiet warmth. Feel the peaceful stillness surrounding you. Breathe slowly. Let every breath become softer. Every thought becomes quieter. Every worry gently drifts away like autumn leaves floating along the Silver Creek. Far away, the castle windows glow with warm golden light. King Theodore closes his journal for another peaceful evening. The valley rests safely beneath the stars. And little by little, your breathing slows, your body feels wonderfully relaxed, and sleep begins to arrive as gently as the quiet American night. The night slowly faded, and another peaceful morning arrived over Evergreen Valley. Soft golden sunlight slipped through the tall oak and maple trees. Dewdrops rested on wildflowers like tiny diamonds, sparkling for just a few quiet moments before the warmth of the morning carried them away. The Silver Creek flowed as gently as ever, its calm waters reflecting the pale blue American sky. King Theodore Ashford awoke before sunrise, as he always did. He lit a small lantern, opened the window of his room, and listened. There was no rush, no loud noise, only the peaceful sounds of birds greeting a new day. The king believed that when the world began in silence, people remembered what truly mattered. After enjoying a simple breakfast of fresh bread, berries, warm milk, and honey, he stepped outside the castle gates. Instead of riding a horse, he chose to walk. He greeted every villager by name whenever he could. Old Mr. Carter, the carpenter, was already shaping a wooden chair. Mrs. Eleanor arranged colorful flowers outside her little bakery. Children laughed quietly as they carried books toward the small village school. Everything felt calm. Everything felt safe. As King Theodore approached the great white oak tree in the center of Evergreen Valley, he noticed something resting near one of its large roots. It was a small brown leather purse. The purse looked old but carefully made. The king gently picked it up. Felt heavy. Inside were silver coins, several folded letters, and a tiny family photograph carefully protected inside a cloth sleeve. He smiled softly. Somewhere in the valley, someone must be searching with a worried heart. Rather than opening the letters, King Theodore closed the purse again. Some things belong only to their owner, he quietly said. Soon the morning market began. Farmers displayed baskets filled with apples, pumpkins, corn, and fresh vegetables. The smell of warm bread drifted through the square. Musicians played gentle fiddle tunes while children skipped happily across the cobblestone paths. The king stood beneath the great oak tree holding the purse. He made no announcement. He simply waited. Nearly an hour passed. Then a middle-aged schoolteacher hurried into the square. Her face showed quiet concern. She stopped in front of the king and bowed politely. "Your Majesty," she said softly, "I fear I have lost my purse." The king smiled kindly. "Can you describe it?" She nodded. "It is made of dark brown leather. There are 32 silver coins inside. My father's letters are folded beneath the coins. And there is a small family photograph wrapped inside a blue cloth." King Theodore handed her the purse without another question. The teacher opened it. Everything remained exactly where she had left it. Her eyes filled with grateful tears. "I thought it was gone forever." The king gently replied, "In Evergreen Valley, lost things are simply waiting to find their way home." The people standing nearby smiled warmly. Several visitors from neighboring towns quietly whispered among themselves. They had never seen a kingdom where no one rushed to claim another person's belongings. That afternoon, word of the event spread far beyond the valley. Travelers carried the story to distant villages. Merchants repeated it at country inns. Families shared it around evening fireplaces. Soon people everywhere spoke about the peaceful king whose greatest law was honesty. A week later, another visitor arrived. This time it was a respected judge from a neighboring American territory. He had heard many stories about King Theodore but found them difficult to believe. Surely no kingdom can truly be this honest, he thought. The judge spent several days quietly observing village life. He watched farmers leave tools outside overnight. He noticed children returning toys they found along the road. He saw merchants measuring grain fairly without anyone watching. Nothing seemed forced. It had simply become part of everyday life. Finally, before leaving, the judge asked the king one important question. "Your Majesty, what law created such honest people?" King Theodore smiled. "It wasn't a law." The judge looked surprised. "Then what was it?" The king looked toward the children playing beneath the great oak tree. They watched their parents. The parents watched their grandparents. And every generation chose truth, even when no one was looking. The judge stood silently for several moments. Then he slowly removed the silver badge from his coat. I have judged people for more than 30 years, he said quietly. But today, I have learned that the greatest courtroom is the human heart. That evening he returned home carrying no treasure, only wisdom. As evening settled over Evergreen Valley once again, soft golden lanterns glowed beside cottage windows. The smell of cedar wood drifted through the cool mountain air. Fireflies danced above the quiet fields. The silver creek reflected thousands of tiny stars. King Theodore returned to the castle library. He opened his leather journal. Carefully dipping his feather quill into ink, he wrote another simple lesson. Honesty is not proven when everyone is watching. It is revealed when no one is. He gently closed the journal. Outside, the moon rose slowly above the peaceful valley. The forests whispered softly beneath the evening breeze. Somewhere nearby, an owl called into the quiet night. Everything felt safe. Everything felt calm. Now imagine yourself walking along the peaceful path beside Silver Creek. The cool evening air brushes gently across your face. Above you, the stars shine with quiet beauty. The great white oak tree stands peacefully beneath the moonlight, its branches moving gently in the breeze. You hear the soft sound of flowing water, the distant song of crickets, the comforting silence of a kingdom where every heart values kindness and truth. Take one slow breath in and slowly breathe out. Feel your body becoming heavier. Feel your thoughts becoming lighter. There is nowhere to hurry, nothing to worry about, only the peaceful rhythm of nature, the gentle glow of the stars, and the quiet promise that tomorrow will bring another beautiful sunrise to Evergreen Valley. As the moon watches over the valley, your breathing becomes slower, your eyelids grow heavier, and sleep gently carries you into peaceful dreams. Another gentle dawn arrived over Evergreen Valley. The first rays of sunlight stretched across the rolling hills, painting the fields with a warm golden glow. A cool breeze wandered through the towering pine forests, carrying the sweet scent of cedar, fresh grass, and wild lavender. Silver Creek flowed peacefully beside the village, just as it always had, whispering its quiet song over smooth stones that had rested there for centuries. King Theodore Ashford stood on the balcony of his simple stone castle and watched the valley awaken. Thin ribbons of smoke rose from cottage chimneys. Farmers opened their wooden gates. Children laughed softly as they walked toward the little schoolhouse carrying books beneath their arms. It was the first day of the Lantern Festival, the most peaceful celebration in all of Evergreen Valley. Unlike festivals in other kingdoms, there were no noisy contests or grand parades. Instead, every family crafted a single lantern by hand. Each lantern represented one honest act they had witnessed during the past year. Some painted tiny birds. Others painted rivers, forests, or stars. Children decorated theirs with bright flowers and colorful leaves. As evening approached, hundreds of lanterns would float gently across Silver Creek, carrying silent wishes of gratitude into the night. King Theodore loved this tradition more than any royal celebration. He believed that remembering kindness helped honesty grow stronger. Throughout the day, villagers gathered in the town square beneath the great white oak tree. Old friends greeted one another warmly. Fresh apple pies cooled on wooden tables. Warm bread filled woven baskets. The sweet smell of cinnamon drifted through the crisp autumn air. Musicians quietly played soft fiddle melodies, while children carefully carried their handmade lanterns. No one hurried. everything moved with calm purpose. As the afternoon sun began to lower behind the distant Blue Ridge Mountains, a young girl named Lily approached the king. She held a small paper lantern decorated with painted bluebirds. "Your Majesty," she asked shyly, "may I show you my lantern?" King Theodore knelt so they were at the same height. "I would be honored." Lily smiled. "My grandfather found a silver watch last winter. He returned it to a traveler even though he needed money. So I painted bluebirds because grandfather says honest hearts are always free." The king looked carefully at the beautiful lantern. "It is one of the finest lanterns I have ever seen." Lily beamed with pride. Nearby, her grandfather smiled quietly but said nothing. He believed actions always spoke louder than praise. As sunset painted the sky with gentle shades of orange, pink, and lavender, the villagers gathered beside Silver Creek. One by one, each family placed its lantern upon the calm water. Tiny lights drifted peacefully downstream. Soon the creek became a glowing ribbon of golden light winding gently through the valley. The reflection of hundreds of lanterns shimmered beneath the evening stars. No one spoke loudly. Most people simply watched in silence. It was a moment of gratitude, a moment of peace. King Theodore carefully placed his own lantern onto the water. Unlike the others, his lantern carried no royal symbol, only a single painted oak leaf. One of the village children noticed. "Why only one leaf, Your Majesty?" The king smiled softly. "Because even the strongest oak begins as one small seed. So does honesty." The child nodded thoughtfully. Farther downstream, an elderly violinist began playing a slow, gentle melody. The music floated across the water like a soft evening breeze. Families wrapped themselves in warm blankets. Parents held sleeping children close. The stars slowly appeared above the peaceful American sky. At that very moment, a traveler arrived quietly at the edge of the festival. He had journeyed from a distant settlement after hearing stories about Evergreen Valley. He expected a grand royal celebration filled with expensive decorations. Instead, he found simple wooden lanterns, kind smiles, quiet music, and a king standing beside ordinary families as though he were simply another neighbor. The traveler whispered to an old farmer, "Where is the royal throne?" The farmer smiled. "It is wherever the king chooses to stand. And tonight, he chooses to stand beside us." The traveler understood. Power was not what made this kingdom remarkable. Humility was. Later that evening, after the last lantern disappeared around the bend in Silver Creek, King Theodore slowly returned to his castle. The moon hung high above the valley, bathing the forests and fields in soft silver light. Inside the castle library, he opened his familiar leather journal. He dipped his feather quill into ink and wrote another quiet thought. When people celebrate kindness instead of wealth, peace quietly follows. He closed the journal and placed it beside the little wooden oak carving that rested on his windowsill. Outside, crickets sang gently beneath the stars. A cool breeze moved through the pine trees. The last glowing lantern floated peacefully toward the distant river, carrying with it the gratitude of an entire kingdom. Now imagine yourself standing beside Silver Creek. The water is calm. Hundreds of tiny lanterns drift silently across its gentle surface. Above you, The stars sparkle like countless diamonds scattered across the endless American night sky. The air is cool and comforting. The soft music of a distant violin blends with the whisper of the flowing river. Take a slow, peaceful breath in and gently breathe out. Feel every muscle begin to relax. Feel every thought become lighter. The lanterns continue their quiet journey. The river continues its timeless song. And the peaceful kingdom of Evergreen Valley slowly falls asleep beneath the watchful moon. As your breathing grows softer and your eyelids become pleasantly heavy, allow yourself to drift gently into a deep, peaceful sleep, knowing that tomorrow, another quiet adventure awaits in the valley where truth, kindness, and honesty always find their way home. A few weeks passed, and the warm colors of autumn slowly faded from Evergreen Valley. The golden leaves that had danced through the air now rested quietly upon the forest floor, forming a soft blanket beneath the towering oak, maple, and pine trees. Morning frost appeared along the edges of Silver Creek, sparkling like tiny crystals beneath the rising sun. The days grew shorter. The nights became calmer. A peaceful winter was quietly making its way across the valley. King Theodore Ashford welcomed every season with the same grateful heart. He believed that each season carried its own lesson. Spring taught hope. Summer taught gratitude. Autumn taught generosity. And winter taught patience. One early morning, before the first snow had fallen, the king walked through the village as he always did. Smoke drifted gently from stone chimneys. The warm smell of fresh bread filled the crisp air. Children laughed as they wrapped colorful scarves around their necks before hurrying toward the little schoolhouse. Everything felt calm. Everything felt peaceful. As King Theodore reached the marketplace, he noticed an elderly woodcutter sitting quietly on a wooden bench. His name was Samuel. For many years, Samuel had gathered firewood from the nearby forest, helping families stay warm through the coldest months. But this morning, his face carried quiet worry. The king sat beside him. "What troubles your heart, my friend?" he asked gently. Samuel smiled politely. "This winter may be colder than usual. I have enough wood for myself." He paused. "But not enough for every family that depends on me." King Theodore listened without speaking. After a moment, he gently placed a hand on the old man's shoulder. "Then we shall gather wood together." Samuel looked surprised. "You mean, you and I?" The king nodded with a warm smile. "Every warm home begins with someone willing to help." The next morning, before sunrise, King Theodore met Samuel at the edge of the great pine forest. Neither wore royal clothing. They carried only simple axes, warm coats, thick gloves, and quiet determination. As they worked, more people quietly joined them. First came two farmers, then a blacksmith, a schoolteacher, a baker. Soon dozens of villagers were carefully gathering fallen branches and stacking firewood. No one had been ordered to help. No reward had been promised. They came simply because kindness had become a way of life in Evergreen Valley. For 3 peaceful days, the valley worked together. By the time the first snowflakes finally drifted from the sky, every family had enough wood to keep their fireplace burning throughout the winter. On the evening of the first snowfall, soft white flakes covered the rooftops, the fields, and the quiet forest paths. Children hurried outside, laughing as they caught snowflakes on their mittens. The valley looked like a beautiful winter painting. King Theodore stood beside Silver Creek. Although parts of the water had begun to freeze along the edges, the gentle current still flowed peacefully through the center. Nearby stood a young boy named Benjamin. He watched the snow falling with wide eyes. "Your Majesty," he asked softly, "why does everyone help each other here?" The king looked toward the snow-covered village. "Because every warm fire we enjoy today," he said, "was once built by someone else's kindness." Benjamin thought about those words for a long moment. Then he quietly nodded. "I hope I can help someone someday." The king smiled. "You already have." Benjamin looked puzzled. "I have. You reminded me that hope is strongest when it is shared." The little boy smiled proudly. That evening, families gathered inside their cozy homes. Fireplaces crackled softly. Warm soup simmered over gentle flames. Fresh bread cooled beside wooden tables. Outside, snow continued falling in peaceful silence. The entire valley glowed beneath the gentle light of the moon. Later that night, King Theodore returned to the castle library. He removed his warm gloves and sat beside the fireplace. The room was quiet except for the comforting sound of burning cedar logs. As always, he opened his leather journal. With slow, careful handwriting, he wrote, "The richest kingdom is the one where every family keeps another family warm." He smiled gently before closing the journal. Outside his window, snowflakes drifted lazily beneath the stars. The little wooden oak carving still rested upon the windowsill, illuminated by soft moonlight. It reminded him that true strength was never measured by gold or power. It was measured by compassion. Now imagine yourself walking through Evergreen Valley on this peaceful winter evening. Fresh snow softly crunches beneath your boots. Warm golden light shines from every cottage window. The smell of cedar wood and fresh bread fills the cool night air. Above you, countless stars sparkle across the clear American sky. A gentle breeze carries tiny snowflakes past your face. Far away, you hear the quiet sound of Silver Creek flowing beneath a thin layer of ice. Everything feels calm. Everything feels safe. Take one slow breath in and gently breathe out. Feel the cool winter air filling your lungs. Feel warmth spreading gently through your body. The peaceful village grows quieter with every passing moment. Families rest beside glowing fireplaces. The forests sleep beneath blankets of snow. King Theodore quietly closes his eyes, grateful for another day filled with kindness, honesty, and gentle promises. And now, as the snow continues to fall without a sound, as the stars shine peacefully above Evergreen Valley, allow your thoughts to drift away like soft snowflakes carried by the winter breeze. Your breathing becomes slower. Your body feels wonderfully relaxed. Your heart feels peaceful. And little by little, you drift into a deep, comforting sleep, wrapped in the quiet warmth of the most honest kingdom in America. Winter settled gently over Evergreen Valley. Each morning, the hills shimmered beneath a blanket of fresh snow. Frost decorated every fence, every tree branch, and every rooftop with delicate white patterns that sparkled beneath the rising sun. Silver Creek continued its peaceful journey through the valley. Although thin sheets of ice rested along its edges, the water beneath flowed steadily, reminding everyone that even during the coldest season, life quietly moved forward. King Theodore Ashford wrapped his blue wool cloak around his shoulders and began his morning walk. The village was calm. Smoke curled gently from stone chimneys. Fresh footprints marked the snowy paths. The smell of warm cinnamon bread drifted from the bakery, mixing with the crisp scent of pine carried by the winter breeze. As the king approached the old wooden bridge crossing Silver Creek, he paused. The bridge had faithfully served the valley for many years. Countless children had skipped across its wooden planks. Farmers had crossed it with wagons full of grain. Travelers had found safe passage over the quiet stream. But now, after many winters, the bridge showed signs of age. Several wooden boards had begun to crack. The handrails leaned slightly. Time had gently worn away parts of the sturdy structure. The village carpenter, Mr. Carter, soon arrived carrying his toolbox. He carefully examined the bridge before turning toward the king. "Your Majesty," he said kindly, "the bridge has served us well, but it must be rebuilt before spring." King Theodore nodded. "A bridge is more than wood," he replied. "It is trust connecting one side to another." The carpenter smiled, understanding exactly what the king meant. Later that afternoon, the villagers gathered in the town square beneath the great white oak tree. King Theodore addressed them with his usual calm voice. "My friends," he began, "our bridge has carried us safely for many years. Now it asks for our care." Before he could say another word, hands began to rise. "I can cut fresh timber," offered one lumberjack. "I'll shape the beams," said the carpenter. "My horses can pull the heavy logs," smiled a nearby farmer. "I'll prepare warm meals for everyone working," added the village baker. One by one, nearly every family volunteered to help. No one argued. No one expected payment. Helping one another had become as natural as the changing seasons. Over the next several days, the valley worked together. Strong pine trees that had fallen naturally during recent storms were carefully chosen for the project. Carpenters measured each beam with patience. Blacksmiths forged sturdy iron nails. Children gathered small branches to keep the workers' campfires burning. Even the oldest villagers found ways to help by sewing warm mittens and scarves for those working in the cold. King Theodore worked beside everyone else. He carried lumber. He held beams steady. He shared simple lunches beneath the winter sky. Visitors passing through the valley often stopped to watch. Many were surprised. Some whispered quietly to one another, "Is that truly the king carrying wood?" An elderly traveler smiled. "Yes, and that is why this kingdom stands so strong." One peaceful afternoon, while the final wooden planks were being placed, a heavy snowfall began. Large snowflakes drifted silently through the air, covering the surrounding forest in soft white beauty. Work paused for a moment. Everyone stood quietly, admiring the peaceful scene. King Theodore looked around at the smiling faces of his people. The bridge before them was beautiful, but something even more beautiful had been built. A bridge between hearts. As the snowfall slowed, the carpenter carefully placed the final wooden board into position. The bridge was complete, simple, strong, built with many hands. That evening, the villagers crossed it together for the first time. Children laughed softly as they tested its sturdy planks. Parents smiled with quiet pride. Lanterns reflected upon the calm waters of Silver Creek below. King Theodore stood in the center of the bridge. He looked toward the peaceful village glowing beneath the evening sky. "This bridge," he said gently, will remind future generations that the strongest foundations are built with honesty, kindness, and trust. Everyone nodded. No grand celebration followed. No speeches filled the night. Only quiet gratitude. As darkness settled over Evergreen Valley, families slowly returned to their warm homes. The stars appeared one by one above the snow-covered mountains. The moon cast a gentle silver light across the newly built bridge. It seemed almost magical. Later, inside the castle library, King Theodore sat beside the crackling fireplace. He opened his familiar leather journal. After a thoughtful pause, he wrote, "A bridge built with honest hands can carry hope for generations." He gently closed the journal and placed it beside the little wooden oak carving. Outside, snowflakes continued falling softly. The new bridge stood peacefully across Silver Creek, ready to welcome tomorrow's travelers. Now imagine yourself walking slowly across that beautiful wooden bridge. Fresh snow rests gently along its rails. The creek below flows quietly beneath patches of ice, reflecting the bright moon and countless stars above. The cold air feels fresh and peaceful. The only sounds are the gentle whisper of the water, the distant call of an owl, and the soft breeze moving through the pine trees. Take a slow, comfortable breath in and gently breathe out. Feel the bridge supporting every step. Feel the quiet strength beneath your feet. Above you, the endless American winter sky sparkles with stars. Ahead of you, warm lanterns glow from the cozy cottages of Evergreen Valley. You are safe. You are peaceful. You are surrounded by kindness. As your breathing becomes slower, as your body grows comfortably heavy, allow the calm rhythm of the flowing creek to carry away every remaining thought. The valley sleeps peacefully beneath its blanket of snow. King Theodore rests with a grateful heart, and you, too, drift gently into a deep, quiet, and restful sleep. The peaceful winter slowly began to soften. Although patches of snow still rested beneath the tall pine trees, warmer days arrived little by little. Tiny drops of melting ice slipped from the rooftops, and Silver Creek flowed more freely with each passing sunrise. The valley welcomed the changing season with quiet joy. Bluebirds returned to their nests. The first green shoots appeared beneath the snow. Wild rabbits wandered through the meadows once again. King Theodore Ashford loved these gentle signs of spring. To him, every new season was like opening another beautiful chapter in nature's oldest book. One bright morning, after greeting the villagers in the marketplace, the king decided to visit one of his favorite places in the kingdom. It was not the castle. It was not the gardens. It was the small village library. The library stood beside an ancient oak tree near the village square. It was a simple stone building with wide wooden windows and shelves filled with carefully loved books. Some books told stories of early American settlers. Others spoke of forests, rivers, birds, and stars. Many contained poems, family histories, and handwritten journals passed down through generations. The librarian, Mrs. Abigail Harper, welcomed everyone with a warm smile. She believed every visitor should leave carrying either a book or a new idea. When King Theodore entered, several children were quietly reading around the fireplace. The room smelled of old paper, cedar wood, and fresh tea. The king smiled. "This may be the richest room in the kingdom," he whispered. Mrs. Harper laughed softly. "Rich with stories, and rich with wisdom," the king replied. One little boy looked up from his book. Your Majesty, he asked, how can books make someone stronger? King Theodore sat beside him. He gently opened an old leather-bound journal resting on the table. Strong hands can build a house, he said, but wise thoughts build a peaceful life. The children listened carefully. Every book, the king continued, allows us to borrow someone else's experience. We learn without making every mistake ourselves. The children smiled thoughtfully and returned to their reading. Later that afternoon, a traveler arrived at the library. He carried a worn backpack filled with books collected from towns across America. Some were stories from the Appalachian Mountains. Others came from the peaceful farms of Pennsylvania. Some described the mighty Mississippi River. Others shared the traditions of Native American storytellers who honored nature with deep respect. The traveler offered the books to the library as gifts. King Theodore thanked him warmly. No treasure, the king said, can travel farther than a good story. Together they carefully placed each book upon the wooden shelves. Soon the library held more knowledge than ever before. That evening, the king announced something special. Every Friday night, the library would remain open after sunset. Families could gather around the fireplace while elders shared stories from long ago. No admission would ever be charged. Everyone would be welcome. The first story evening arrived a few days later. Outside, the stars sparkled above Evergreen Valley. Inside the library, lanterns cast a warm golden glow across the wooden walls. Children rested on soft blankets. Parents sipped warm apple cider. Grandparents smiled as they prepared to tell stories they had carried in their hearts for many years. One elderly woman spoke about courage during difficult winters. A retired sailor described calm evenings along America's eastern coast. A farmer shared lessons learned from planting seeds with patience. No story was hurried. Each one flowed gently, like Silver Creek beneath the moonlight. King Theodore listened more than he spoke. He believed a wise ruler never stopped learning. As the evening came to an end, the youngest child in the room quietly asked, "Your Majesty, which book is your favorite?" The king looked toward the shelves filled with hundreds of beautiful stories. Then he smiled. "My favorite book has blank pages." The children looked puzzled. "A blank book?" The king nodded. "Because tomorrow we will write another good day together." Everyone smiled. It was a simple answer, but no one forgot it. Later that night, King Theodore returned to the castle. The moon shone brightly over Evergreen Valley. The library's warm windows still glowed softly in the distance. He entered his quiet study, opened his faithful leather journal, and carefully wrote another lesson. Knowledge teaches the mind. Honesty teaches the heart. Together they light the way. He gently closed the journal and placed it beside the little wooden oak carving that had become his nightly companion. Outside, a gentle breeze moved through the awakening trees. The first spring flowers rested quietly beneath the moon. Silver Creek continued its endless journey through the peaceful American Valley. Now imagine yourself walking slowly toward the little village library. Warm light shines through its windows. Inside, a gentle fire crackles in the stone fireplace. You choose a comfortable chair beside the fire. A kind storyteller begins reading in a soft, peaceful voice. Outside, the night is calm. The The stars glow brightly above the mountains. The cool breeze carries the sweet scent of pine and fresh spring blossoms. Take a slow breath in and gently breathe out. Feel the warmth of the fire. Hear the turning pages of a well-loved book. Allow every peaceful word to quiet your thoughts. Your body grows heavier. Your breathing becomes slower. The peaceful kingdom rests beneath a sky full of stars. King Theodore smiles, knowing another day has ended with kindness, wisdom, and truth. And little by little, as the fire glows softly, as Silver Creek whispers through the valley, and as the gentle American night wraps around Evergreen Valley, you drift into a deep, peaceful, and comforting sleep. Spring arrived in full beauty across Evergreen Valley. The snow had completely disappeared, leaving behind rolling green meadows covered with wildflowers. Bluebirds fluttered from branch to branch, while butterflies danced gently through fields of daisies and lavender. Silver Creek sparkled beneath the warm morning sun, and the soft breeze carried the sweet fragrance of apple blossoms throughout the valley. King Theodore Ashford loved this season more than any other. He often said that spring reminded everyone that patience was always rewarded. One peaceful morning, as the church bell echoed softly across the valley, the king walked beyond the village to visit a place that brought him great joy. It was the community garden. Unlike the gardens surrounding the castle, this one belonged to everyone. Long rows of rich soil stretched across the gentle hillside. Tomatoes, pumpkins, beans, carrots, corn, strawberries, and herbs grew side by side. Children worked beside grandparents. Farmers shared tools with neighbors. No fences divided the land. No signs claimed ownership. Every person helped, and every family shared in the harvest. As King Theodore entered the garden, he noticed a young girl carefully planting tiny sunflower seeds. Her name was Emma. She looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Your Majesty." "And a beautiful morning to you, Emma," the king replied. "What are you planting today?" "Sunflowers," she answered proudly. "My grandmother says they always turn toward the light." King Theodore knelt beside her and gently placed one small seed into the soil. "People can learn from sunflowers," he said softly. Emma tilted her head. "How?" "They remind us to keep turning toward kindness, even when life becomes cloudy." The little girl smiled and carefully covered the seed with fresh earth. Nearby, Mr. Carter, the village carpenter, was repairing a wooden fence, not to keep people out, but to protect the young plants from wandering deer. The baker brought warm rolls for everyone working. The blacksmith repaired gardening tools free of charge. The school children carried buckets of water from Silver Creek. Every task was shared. Every smile was genuine. As the afternoon sun warmed the valley, a traveler arrived carrying a leather pouch filled with rare flower seeds. He had journeyed across many American settlements collecting unusual plants from distant valleys and mountain towns. When he saw the community garden, he paused in surprise. "There are no locked gates?" he asked. "No," replied Emma with a cheerful smile. "Aren't you afraid someone might take everything?" King Theodore answered gently. "In Evergreen Valley, the more we share, the more we all have." The traveler looked around. He saw neighbors helping one another without being asked. He saw children learning by watching adults work together. Without another word, he opened his leather pouch. Inside were beautiful seeds for blue lupins, white lilies, and bright red poppies. "They belong here," he said quietly. The villagers thanked him warmly. Together they planted the new flowers along the paths leading into the garden. Within weeks, colorful blossoms would welcome every visitor who entered. As evening approached, everyone gathered beneath a large maple tree for a simple meal. Fresh bread, garden vegetables, apple pie, cool spring water from Silver Creek. No one rushed. Laughter drifted gently through the air as the golden sunlight slowly faded into soft shades of pink and lavender. King Theodore looked around the table. Young and old, rich and poor, farmers, teachers, blacksmiths, carpenters, travelers. Everyone shared the same meal, the same conversation, the same peaceful evening. Quietly, the king said, "A garden grows because many hands care for it. A kingdom grows for the very same reason." Everyone nodded in agreement. As twilight settled over Evergreen Valley, the first fireflies appeared among the flowers. Tiny lights floated gently above the garden, blinking like little stars that had wandered down from the night sky. Families slowly returned home. The peaceful valley became wonderfully quiet once again. Back at the castle, King Theodore entered his library. The familiar leather journal rested on his desk. He dipped his feather quill into ink and carefully wrote, "A single seed feeds one person. A shared seed feeds generations." He closed the journal with a gentle smile. Outside his window, the moon rose slowly above the hills. The community garden rested peacefully beneath its silver light. The young sunflower seeds slept quietly beneath the soil, preparing for the day they would reach toward the sun. Now imagine yourself walking through that beautiful garden. The evening air is warm and gentle. Wildflowers sway softly in the spring breeze. You hear the quiet chirping of crickets and the distant song of Silver Creek flowing peacefully through the valley. The stars begin to appear above the endless American sky. A few fireflies drift slowly around you, glowing softly in the darkness. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently breathe out. Feel the soft earth beneath your feet. Feel the cool evening breeze upon your face. Notice how peaceful everything has become. There is nothing to hurry, nothing to worry about, only the quiet beauty of nature, the kindness of shared hearts, and the comforting rhythm of a kingdom where honesty grows as naturally as flowers in spring. As your breathing becomes slower, as your thoughts become lighter, and as the peaceful garden rests beneath the moon, allow yourself to drift gently into a deep, calm, and restful sleep. Tomorrow, another quiet adventure awaits in Evergreen Valley. Summer returned to Evergreen Valley with gentle warmth. The hills rolled like waves of emerald green beneath a bright blue American sky. Wildflowers swayed softly in the breeze, and Silver Creek reflected the clouds as it quietly wound its way through the valley. The orchards were full of ripe apples. The gardens overflowed with vegetables. The forests echoed with the songs of robins, blue jays, and cardinals. It was the season of abundance. Yet King Theodore Ashford often reminded his people that the greatest harvest was never found in the fields. It was found in the heart. One peaceful morning, the king walked to the center of the village where the great white oak tree had stood for longer than anyone could remember. Its enormous branches had sheltered generations of children. Travelers had rested beneath its shade after long journeys. Families had celebrated birthdays, weddings, and harvest festivals under its wide canopy. The oak had become the quiet symbol of Evergreen Valley. As King Theodore approached, he noticed Mr. Carter, the village carpenter, gently touching the tree's rough bark. "The old oak is changing," Mr. Carter said softly. The king looked upward. Some of the highest branches had begun to dry. The tree was still beautiful, still strong, but age had quietly begun its patient work. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Finally, King Theodore smiled. "Even the strongest trees remind us that every season has its purpose." Word spread gently through the village. That evening, families gathered beneath the old oak, not in sadness, but in gratitude. Children listened as grandparents shared stories of the tree. One remembered carving a tiny wooden whistle beneath its branches as a young boy. Another recalled proposing marriage beneath its leaves many decades earlier. A grandmother smiled as she remembered bringing her newborn daughter to the tree on her very first spring morning. The oak had quietly witnessed thousands of beautiful moments. King Theodore stood before the gathering. "My friends," he said in his calm voice, "nothing in nature lasts forever. The river keeps flowing. The seasons keep changing. And even the greatest trees one day return to the earth. But kindness," he paused and smiled warmly, "kindness can live forever if we continue sharing it." The next morning, the village elders carefully examined the ancient tree. They agreed it should remain standing for as long as nature allowed. But they also decided to prepare for the future. Together, they gathered dozens of healthy acorns that had fallen beneath the mighty oak. Children collected them in small woven baskets. Each family received one acorn to plant somewhere in the valley, near a farmhouse, beside a school, along the riverbank, next to the library, inside the community garden. Every acorn carried the promise of another tree, another generation, another beginning. Little Emma carefully planted hers beside the garden path. Benjamin chose a quiet hill overlooking Silver Creek. Mrs. Harper, the librarian, planted hers outside the library windows where future readers could enjoy its shade. King Theodore walked alone to a peaceful meadow overlooking the entire valley. There, he knelt quietly and planted the final acorn. As he covered it with soft earth, he whispered, "May honesty continue to grow long after we are gone." A gentle breeze moved through the grass as though nature itself had heard his words. Weeks passed peacefully. Summer slowly gave way to the first hints of autumn once again. Tiny green shoots began appearing where the acorns had been planted. Children visited them almost every day. They measured their growth, watered them carefully, protected them from curious rabbits. They understood these little trees would one day shelter children they would never meet. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the sky with gold, amber, and soft lavender, King Theodore returned to the great white oak. The old tree stood quietly beneath the glowing sky. Its branches swayed gently in the evening breeze. The king rested his hand against its weathered trunk. "Thank you," he whispered, not because the tree could answer, but because gratitude never required a reply. That night, back inside the castle library, the familiar fire crackled softly in the stone fireplace. The king opened his leather journal. For a long time, he simply looked at the blank page. Finally, he wrote, "The greatest legacy is not what we leave behind. It is what continues to grow because we once cared. He closed the journal gently. Outside his window, the stars appeared one by one above Evergreen Valley. Silver Creek reflected their quiet light. The tiny oak saplings rested peacefully beneath the moon, reaching silently toward tomorrow. Now imagine yourself sitting beneath the great white oak. A cool evening breeze moves softly through its branches. The scent of pine, fresh grass, and wildflowers fills the peaceful air. Above you, thousands of stars shine across the endless American night. You hear the gentle whisper of leaves, the distant song of the creek, the quiet call of an owl deep within the forest. Take one slow breath in and slowly breathe out. Feel yourself becoming lighter, calmer, more peaceful. Imagine the tiny acorns resting safely beneath the earth. Though unseen, they are already growing. Just as kindness quietly grows within every honest heart. The valley grows still. The cottages glow warmly beneath the moon. The old oak watches peacefully over the kingdom it has loved for so many years. And as the stars continue their silent journey across the sky, as the cool breeze gently rocks the branches overhead, allow yourself to drift into a deep, restful sleep, wrapped in the timeless peace of Evergreen Valley. Another peaceful autumn arrived in Evergreen Valley. The hills shimmered beneath shades of gold, amber, and crimson. Gentle breezes carried colorful leaves across quiet paths, while Silver Creek continued its endless journey beneath clear blue American skies. Many years had passed since King Theodore Ashford first became the ruler of the valley. His hair had turned silver. Fine lines rested around his kind eyes. His steps were slower than before. Yet whenever he walked through the village, the people still greeted him with the same warm smiles they had shared for decades. Children still ran to wave at him. Farmers still invited him to taste the season's first apples. The baker still set aside a warm loaf of bread every morning, just in case the king happened to stop by. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had grown. The tiny acorns planted beneath the old white oak had become young trees. Their branches stretched toward the sky. Birds built nests among their leaves. Children played beneath their growing shade, just as generations before them had gathered beneath the great oak. One quiet morning, King Theodore climbed a gentle hill overlooking Evergreen Valley. From there he could see nearly everything: the stone castle, the little library, the community garden, the wooden bridge crossing Silver Creek, the church with its white bell tower, the orchards glowing in the morning light, and beyond them all, endless forests rolling toward distant blue mountains. The king sat on a smooth stone. He simply watched. The village awakened naturally. Smoke drifted from chimneys. Dogs stretched lazily outside cottages. Bluebirds welcomed another sunrise. The valley no longer depended on one man's leadership. His people had become leaders themselves. They had learned that honesty was not something given by a king. It was something quietly practiced every day. Later that afternoon, the villagers gathered beneath one of the young oak trees. Children sang gentle songs. Families shared fresh bread, apple pie, warm soup, and sweet cider. No grand ceremony had been planned. No royal announcement had been made. The people had gathered simply because they wished to spend time together. King Theodore looked around the circle of smiling faces. "I have ruled this valley for many years," he said softly. But if anyone asks what my greatest achievement was, he smiled gently, I will tell them it was never a building, never a bridge, never a law. It was watching neighbors become friends. The valley grew wonderfully quiet. Even the breeze seemed to pause among the trees. A little girl stepped forward. It was Emma, now much older than the child who had once planted sunflower seeds in the community garden. She carried a small wooden box. Inside rested the tiny oak carving the king had received many years ago from the traveler whose father had searched the country for an honest ruler. Emma carefully held it toward him. Your Majesty, she said, this carving belongs to the people now. King Theodore smiled. No, it belongs to every generation that chooses truth. He gently placed the little wooden oak into the hands of the youngest child standing nearby. The little boy looked at it with wide, curious eyes. Take good care of it, the king whispered. Not because it is valuable, but because it reminds us who we choose to be. The child nodded seriously. As the golden afternoon slowly faded into evening, families lit small lanterns once again, just as they had done every autumn for many years. One by one, the glowing lanterns floated across Silver Creek. Tiny reflections danced upon the calm water. The sky turned shades of lavender, deep blue, and silver. Stars quietly appeared above Evergreen Valley. King Theodore walked slowly to the center of the wooden bridge. The same bridge the villagers had built together many years before. He rested his hands upon the smooth wooden rail and listened. The creek whispered below. The wind moved gently through the pine trees. Somewhere nearby, an owl welcomed the coming night. The king closed his eyes, not because he was tired, but because he wanted to remember every peaceful sound, every laugh, every season, every sunrise, every quiet act of kindness that had shaped this remarkable valley. Later that evening, he returned to his library for one final time. The familiar leather journal rested upon the desk. The fireplace glowed softly. Moonlight entered through the open window. King Theodore turned to the final blank page. He dipped his feather quill into ink. With calm, steady handwriting, he wrote, Truth is like a river. It flows gently, asks for nothing, and gives life to everyone who walks beside it. May Evergreen Valley always remember that kindness is the greatest treasure, honesty is the strongest crown, and peace is the richest reward. He closed the journal with a peaceful smile. Outside, the valley rested beneath a sky filled with countless stars. The young oak trees swayed gently in the cool night breeze. Silver Creek continued its timeless song. Warm lights glowed from every cottage window. Children slept peacefully. Families rested with grateful hearts. And the story of the most honest king in America quietly became a legend, not because of battles won or riches collected, but because one humble man had shown an entire community that truth, kindness, and trust could outlive any crown. Now, as you imagine yourself standing on that quiet bridge beneath the endless American night sky, take one last slow, gentle breath in and slowly breathe out. Feel the cool breeze upon your face. Hear the peaceful sound of the flowing creek. See the stars shining softly above the sleeping valley. Allow every thought to drift away like a lantern floating peacefully downstream. Your body is relaxed. Your breathing is slow. Your mind is calm. Evergreen Valley grows quieter with every passing moment. The river flows, the trees sway, the stars keep watch, and somewhere, in that peaceful valley where honesty became a way of life, a gentle silence welcomes you into the deepest, most restful sleep. Good night. Sleep